Hi, I'm Olaf, and welcome to the all-encompassing guide for runes and Olaf. Today I'm going to break down marks, glyphs, seals, and quintessences in that order, as well as having a few example pages at the end. What I'm going to do is talk about a specific rune and how it affects your kit, as well as give it a rating out of 10 for both jungle and top lane. Don't be too concerned about the number itself, it's mainly to just giving you an idea as to how this rune matches up against other runes. If you would like me to talk about a specific type of rune, click on that rune and you should be taken to the correct spot in the video. You can do the same for the rune pages as well. Starting with marks. Really, there's only 3 good efficient marks for Olaf. The rest of them just really aren't as efficient and don't really deserve to be in the mark slot. The first one I'm going to talk about is attack speed marks. They are good for jungle clears. They're not too great for top lane because normally you can't get in a ton of auto attacks in the lane phase unless you're all inning, and then you're also sacrificing what other type of marks could be in the attack speed marks' place. Overall, I'd give the attack speed marks an 8 out of 10 for jungle, and for top lane I'd give it a 5 out of 10. The next marks I'm going to talk about is armor pen. Armor pen is decent in top lane if you aren't going to buy any armor pen items. It also stacks with black cleaver, and it's good against champions who normally don't either buy a lot of armor or if they don't buy armor early on. It makes you do more damage to champions early on, but it also makes it harder to last hit, as well as clear your jungle, and your E will not do as much damage as if you were to have flat 80 marks. Overall, I would give it in the jungle a 6 out of 10, and in the top lane an 8 out of 10. Now, moving on to the overall best marks in the game, that would be flat AD. It's probably, out of all of the marks, the best you can pick in top lane. It is good for jungle because of the Q damage, as well as having more AD while your W is active, which also means more healing and more damage when you're low in clears. All parts of his kit scale with flat AD. Also makes his early game stronger because of his W being active, which means you're going to be auto attacking more, which means you're going to be doing more DPS, as well as if you're getting low because of your passive, you're going to be doing more damage, and then it allows for your Q and your E to also do more damage. Overall, I would rate the flat AD marks in the jungle a 10 out of 10, and for top lane a 10 out of 10. Keep in mind that just because I consider flat 80 marks the best, doesn't mean you have to run them. Just take what I said about each rune into consideration and then go from there. I will also have a page that actually uses armor pen in one of my example pages. Now, onto glyphs. The last rune I'm going to talk about, I don't really consider it good on Olaf, but nonetheless, it still is an option for everyone, so I'm going to talk about it anyways. And keep in mind that scaling versus flat will have some of the same pros and cons. Starting off with flat MR. Flat MR is good against early level magic damage, but it gets outscaled at level 9 by scaling magic resistance. It makes you tankier early on, and therefore stronger. It's very good against champions who deal magic damage early on in the game. For the jungle, I would give it an 8 out of 10. For top lane, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Next is scaling magic resistance. It scales better than flat magic resistance, but it takes a while to actually scale within the game. It makes you tankier once again, and therefore stronger later on. It's a good pickup if you aren't facing magic damage in your lane, but their team composition has a lot of magic damage. Or any magic damage in general. It's good in the jungle since you don't really face a lot of magic damage unless you look to duel a lot. That being said, I would rate for the scaling magic resistance in the jungle a 9 out of 10, and for top lane a 9 out of 10. Moving on to the people's favorite of flat CDR blues. You do a little bit more DPS than normal since your cooldowns are also just 10% lower. The trade-off though is that it leaves you with little to no MR. It also means that you need to take a CDR quint in order to get that nice 10% CDR mark. Any other over or under 10 is useless. You do not want that. It also makes it significantly easier to get to 40% CDR. It is the best glyph in the jungle, and it's pretty decent in the top lane. For jungle, I would rate flat CDR a 10 out of 10, and for top lane, I would rate it an 8 out of 10. Moving on to scaling CDR, you do a little bit more DPS than normal since your cooldowns are lower, obviously. The trade-off is that it leaves you with little to no magic resistance. It also means that you need to take a CDR quint in order to get to 10% CDR. It makes it significantly easier to get to 40% CDR, and you actually kind of lose out on your stronger early game since you won't hit 40% CDR until very, very late in the game. Overall, it's not as good as flat magic resistance. For jungle, I would rate scaling CDR a 7 out of 10, and for top lane, I would rate it a 5 out of 10. Now we're on to seals. The first seal that we're going to talk about is flat HP. Flat HP makes you harder to kill. It also gives you a little more time with your passive being very high, and health contributes to survivability and damage via your E as well as your passive. I would rate these in the jungle a 7 out of 10, and in the top lane an 8 out of 10. Moving on to scaling HP, or HP per level. HP per level makes you harder to kill, gives you a little more time with your passive being very high. Health also contributes to survivability and damage via your E as well as your passive. It's not as much as HP for flat, which means you lose out on your strong early game, but obviously as it scales it becomes better than flat HP. These are decent if you're building tanky, and it can actually help you in the end pretty significantly. Only if you're building tanky though. Overall, I would give this an 8 out of 10 in the jungle, and for top lane, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Moving on to what I consider the best seals in the game for Olaf, that would be flat armor. Flat armor makes you harder to kill, it makes for better trades, it helps keep you sustained within top lane since you're not taking as much damage, it scales with Thornmill, and it also makes your jungle clears a little bit at higher HP. Overall, I would give these, in the both jungle and the top lane, a 10 out of 10. Last but not least, we have quintessences. We have about 7 quintessences that I'm going to go over. The rest of them you can pretty much just ignore. They're not very useful. The first quintessence we're going to talk about is flat HP. It makes you harder to kill, gives you a little more time with your passive, and health contributes to survivability and damage via your E and your passive. Pretty much the same exact thing as the flat HP seals, except it just gives you a little bit more health. Overall, I would give it a 7 out of 10 in the jungle, and a 6 out of 10 in the top lane. Next, we have the lifesteal quintessences. Lifesteal makes enemies take longer to kill you. It also gives you good jungle clears, leaves you at high health. It's okay sustained in the top lane. It's not too good for when you're diving carries. It stacks with your W, as well as Spear Visage, as well as the other masteries that give you both lifesteal and makes lifesteal that much better. And it also stacks with Bloodlust. Overall, I would give it in the jungle a 9 out of 10, and in the top lane a 7 out of 10. Next is armor quintessences. They're not really all that great, but that's fine. It makes you harder to kill, it helps with your jungle clears, and if you're facing an all AD damage team, this could be actually a good option for a quintessence. It also makes you better at trading in top lane, as well as dueling in the jungle. Overall, for jungle and top lane, I would give this rune a 6 out of 10. Okay, the next quintessence I'm going to talk about is attack speed. Attack speed is pretty much the same thing as the marks. They're very good in your jungle clears and allows for your passive to hit faster. It also gives you more overall DPS when you're low. In the jungle, I would give this an 8 out of 10, and in the top lane, I would give this a 5 out of 10. Next is movement speed quints. Movement speed quints are good for utility, as well as it stacks with Ghost and Deadman's Plate. It makes people easier to catch out since hitting Q works to slow the enemy down so that you can actually catch up to them.
It's good for the jungle so you can kind of move around the map and actually exert pressure around the map. It also helps you potentially stick to targets, and it's probably the best quint if you're going straight tank. Overall, I would give it an 8 out of 10 in the jungle, and for top lane, a 9 out of 10. Next is flat CDR quintessences. Ideally, you'll only run one flat quint because you'll want to have CDR quints, and so you can get 10%. You really only want 10% from your runes at most, because then that allows you to actually buy CDR within the game. Overall, I'd rate this a 10 out of 10 in the jungle, and an 8 out of 10 in the top lane. Last but not least, we have flat 80 quints. Overall, they are the best quints for Olaf, unless you want some sort of utility within your rune page. They are very good in the jungle because of your Q damage, and it also affects your clear speed. All parts of Olaf's kit actually scales with flat AD, which is why it makes this rune so strong. It also makes his early game that much more stronger because with your W active, you get harder hitting attacks. With your passive, you get harder hitting attacks as well as more attacks as well, obviously because you get attack speed. Same thing goes with W. Your Q and your E will also do more damage. It isn't required for you to have all 3 quints to get the same effect, but usually since you run 80 reds, you're still getting a high amount of AD, which then means you can use this in conjunction with a CDR quint. Overall, I'd rate flat 80 quints, both the top and the jungle, a 10 out of 10. Now we're on to the rune page discussion. Remember, these are just some examples that you can use. There really isn't a specific all-encompassing best page for Olaf. It's more that there are certain pages that are most optimal for certain specific playstyles. For this jungle page, I have 80 reds, which are for clear speed. Scaling health is because you overall would want to build tanky with a specific page. Flat MR, blues, which means you're going to want to duel people early, and flat 80 quints for clear speed again. Overall, this page says you want to clear your jungle fast, you also want to be high health, and then you also want to fight people early on, and then you want to build towards tank. Now on to the first page for top lane. For this page we have armor pen reds, which says that you want to fight people early on. Armor seals, which means you want to sustain and trade. Armor per level blues, which means you're not facing any magic damage dealing champion in your lane. And finally, flat 80 quints for both fighting people as well as last hitting. Overall, the page says you want to fight people and you want to fight them early. You're going to be building some damage and you're not facing any magic damage in your lane. On to the next page. This is the second top lane page that I use. Basically, you have flat 80 reds and quints, flat armor seals, and flat MR blues. This page says you want to fight people and you really want to fight them as early as possible. That you're going to be building damage and you are facing someone who does magic damage early on. On to the last page. This page we have flat 80 reds, flat armor seals, 6 flat CDR blues, 3 scaling MR blues, 2 CDR quints, and 1 flat 80 quint. This is the CDR page, in case you didn't get that from the blues. This page says that I'm going to build CDR items, and I'm not really facing any heavy magic damage early on in the game. I personally use this page for CDR because I actually prefer to have some MR early on, and having some MR is worth more to me than having 2 more AD from an AD quint. This is kind of long-winded, and it actually took me a little much longer than I thought it would. For the most part, unless Olaf's kit gets an entire rework, all the things I said about each rune will pretty much be the same and won't change. As far as pages go, I pretty much stick to my 2 top lane pages just because overall I find more success with them, as well as me being able to utilize Olaf's very strong levels 1 to 4. This is a part of a series where I'm going to be breaking down Olaf from runes to masteries to matchups and lane phase and everything else in between. This is going to go directly onto my Olaf guide if you haven't seen it and would like to check it out. The link is going to be in the description below. If you're watching this from the guide, I have more content on the way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed my guide, also please give it a thumbs up. If If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know in the comment section of my video or my guide, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.